constitutional requirements of declaring a president, particularly at this time that political pundits are forecasting if you don't win at the first ballot, there's going to be a runoff. Tell us more, please.
Well, the Constitution requires that for a clear winner to emerge, you must have recorded 25% of the votes in at least 2/3 of the states. And of course, the majority of lawful votes. There is a problem with respect to the interpretation of 2/3.
25% of 2/3. That's, you know, will easily remind you of 12 2/3 during the Second Republic.
Yeah, but the court has already established the principle that you cannot fractionalize a state. So we're talking of 24 states.
All right.
Out of 36. But there is also a new argument that both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court have held that the Federal Capital Territory is a 37th state in the country. Because Section 299 of the Constitution provides that Abuja shall be treated as a state, FCT shall be treated as a state.
Yeah.
So if that interpretation is accepted, then we should be talking of about 25 states.
All right.
I mean, Senior Advocate, there are divergent views on how region and religion will play critical roles in this election, considering those that have emerged frontrunners in the race. And so, like Christian said earlier, a lot of pundits have said it's not business as usual. The two major political parties are now given a run by some other political parties. So they foresee a runoff. They don't see a clear winner at the first ballot. Do you think so? And if you don't, what does the Constitution say about a runoff?
For me, the members of the ruling class will have to be blamed for the crisis we are going through. Whereas up to the Second Republic, elections were anchored on programs. You either talk of the four, in the Second Republic, you either talk of the 4 cardinal programs of the UPN, the
Greek Revolution of the
MPN, or the revolutionary program of the PRP. And of course, MPP was, had the same program, as
with
MPN.
Yeah.
While
GNPP too.
So along the same line of MPP. But now, you can't draw a line of dichotomy between the APC and PDP and other. As a matter of fact, in the parliament now, it's the same position on all issues. Whereas in the Second Republic, you could predict that the PRP and the UPN will vote the same way, while the MPN and the MPP will vote the same way. But the dichotomy is gone. And that is why people are now embracing religion or ethnicity, because you're not addressing the problems confronting the people. But talking about, the whole idea is that if a clear winner does not emerge in the first ballot, assuming a candidate scores the majority of lawful votes, while another one meets the territorial spread, you may have
a runoff.
Now,
if I just ask you very quickly, from your assessment, of the political terrain, who do you think are the 2 likely candidates to head for this runoff, if there is going to be one?
Frankly speaking, I haven't.
No, I know you're not a political pundit.
No, I haven't had the time to conduct an opinion poll. So I'm not in a position, frankly speaking, and I'm not a pastor, who can say that the Almighty God,
Prophecy.
In my dream,
You are not a
I
modern
saw
day.
the Almighty God who said his candidate, oh, your bid that will win. You know,
You are
that's
not
what
a
is going on
modern
in
day
Nigeria.
Nostradamus, right?
No. I'm not a psychologist,
Okay, so even though you might not be able to predict, you don't have a crystal ball, and you say you have not paid enough attention to what's going on, how would you describe, I mean, you're a Nigerian, you're also a senior advocate of Nigeria. How would you describe the mood of the country barely for 5 days to the
by
election?
now, Nigerians will have been fully prepared for the election.
You think we're not fully prepared?
Unfortunately, there's no indication. Up till now, people are still saying, will the election hold or not?
But the chief of defense staff reiterated today for the umpteenth time, along with military chiefs and the chief of the
also released
police,
a statement last week
and
that
said
elections will
the
hold.
election will hold.
The chief of defense staff, with profound respect, has no business with respect to our election. I mean, I was very embarrassed when I saw the...
No, but they serve as
please.
buffer.
When I saw the Inspector General of Police, standing, by his right hand, you can see. And the man is talking. No, we are under a democratic system of government.
Yeah.
It's the Inspector General of Police that should be speaking for the security people, because it is the police under the law that will man the post. The army, the armed forces, are only asked to stand by. In other words, if the police cannot police the booths, you may then invite the military. But in this case, the country is shut down on the day of election. There is restriction of movement on the day of election. So the armed forces have no business with our elections. And please, let us all appreciate that we're operating a civilian dispensation whereby the military must go back to their barracks. And that is the law. Under Section 217 of the Constitution.
Even with the state of insecurity in the country, did the police...
The government has put them, you go and fight, go and conduct counter-insurgency operations. And where you have gunmen and others, disturbing the peace of the society, take care of that. But when it comes to election, we must allow the Independent National Electoral Commission to take charge. So when you say the army says there, or the armed forces say, or their leader, oh, we are ready for the election. What's your business in the election? What we should be, the person that should be doing the talking now is the INEC chair, who, again, the INEC has said, we need cash to take care of some logistics. Has the money been released? No. Even the armed forces, the NSA spoke, I think the other day, we are conducting counter-insurgency operation. We can't ask the soldiers to leave the battlefront and be looking for POS or ATM. So we also need some cash. These areas have to be addressed. And for the masses of our people, it is only when you have access to your money that you can be happy and ready for election. Right now, on that day, there are people that will want to transport themselves, hire vehicles to take them to where they are going to vote. You guys in the media will have to cover the events. So we must be ready. And people are dying in the hospitals because they have no access to their money. So all this will have to be taken seriously. But you know our problem. Head or tail, the masses of our people must suffer. Oh, some people have hidden billions of naira at home, so we must suffer for it. Oh, we have now given out new notes.
All right.
The central bank governor says the same political elite have captured the new notes. So why must the people be punished?
And the president again released the message even from Addis Ababa saying, please be patient with my administration. We are doing all to mitigate all of this concern. So he understands that they are concerned.
There is no basis for the appeal for patience.
I would like us to go back to the constitutional matter for the elections because we need to get all this grounded.
Yes, please.
The constitution has said for you to emerge the president of Nigeria, you must meet the majority spread, and you also talked about the
majoritarian,
regional spread. But in the case that we have that runoff that you talked about, what does the constitution say? Who are those two that we qualify to emerge for that runoff? constitutional-wise.
The
The
circumstances,
circumstances
yes.
that would
The
lead to
two,
that.
for instance, I've said, if a candidate meets a requirement, say the territorial spread, I have won in about 24 of 25 states. That's one. Two, if another candidate scores the majority of lawful votes. In other words, if no candidate satisfy both conditions.
It has to be both conditions.
Yes.
From Nigerians about section 131 of the
134.
Constitution. 134,
34.
sorry,
Yes.
of the
Okay.
Constitution.
As regards, the requirements for a presidential candidate, again, it is very crucial to understand these matters.
Yeah.
So the section of that constitution, of the 1999 Constitution as amended, section 134, says that for an election to the office of the president shall be deemed to have been duly elected where there have been only two candidates for the election. He has the majority of votes cast at the election, and he has not less than 1/4 of the votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, which is said. Well, a candidate for the election to the office of the president shall be deemed to have been duly elected where there have been more than two candidates for the election. He has the highest number of votes cast at the election, and he has not less than 1/4 of the vote cast at the election each of at least 2/3 of all states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. I like your side, I see you're not in agreement. Well, in a default of a candidate duly elected in accordance with subsection 2 of that section 134, well, there shall be a second election, that's the runoff, with accordance with subsection 4 of this section, at which the only candidate shall be the candidate who scored the highest number of votes at any election held in accordance with the said subsection 2 of the section 134, and one among the remaining candidates who has a majority of votes in the highest number of states. So, however, that where there are more than one candidate with majority of votes in the highest number of states, the candidate among them with the highest total of votes cast at the election shall be the second candidate for the election. So some clarity there as to how they emerge. So let's go on. In default of a candidate duly elected under the foregoing subsections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is Nigeria's electoral body, shall within 7 days of the result of the election held under the said subsections 2 and 4, arrange for an election between the two candidates, and a candidate at such election shall be deemed elected to be office of the president if he has majority of the vote cast at the election and he has not less than 1/4 of the vote cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all the states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. So, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, that sort of gives us an insight into the
process of
not just only the process, but the situation that would lead to the emergence and the requirements.
Yes.
So it's not just any two, there are conditions for them.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes. And you say we are not likely to go into this, or do you think we're going to go into this?
From the look of things, it may not be difficult for one or two candidates to meet the requirement of a territorial spread, that is 2/3 majority of the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, talking of 25 states.
That's to elect. Now, because we want our viewers to understand it,
Second,
there's a lot to read
the
there.
second condition is whoever has the majority of lawful votes, in the totality of the votes, whoever scores the highest will have been deemed to have been elected as the president. But if no candidates meet that requirement or those two requirements, then you're going to have a second election. Again, in which the 2 or 3 or 4 that have met those requirements, but at that stage, 2 will be required to contest, having regards to the votes
scored.
and the territorial
The
spread. For
spread.
instance, if somebody, let's say, meets the requirement of majority of level votes, another one 20 states instead of 25. Okay? If the person with 20 votes, right, does not score the majority of level votes, there is somebody that didn't meet the requirement of the
24
territorial
plus
spread,
125.
but who has the majority of level votes. You have to conduct the election for the two of them. The implication is that others will have fallen by the wayside. Because it's not likely, that you may have 4 or 5 people meeting those requirements at the same time. No, not likely. But what is important is that those who wrote those provisions wanted a situation where the president that will emerge would be, represent the country, as it were.
We'll have this spread,
Yeah.
so to say.
Yeah.
And there's a condition of 7 days. The electoral body has to do this within 7 days.
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes.
You think we're ready for a runoff? Should we go into runoff?
INEC, I go by the commitment of INEC. INEC says we are fully prepared for this election. We only hope that all the necessary logistics will be provided by the government. The central bank in particular, which is now, giving us electoral guidelines. Usurping the functions of INEC. INEC is now begging the central bank, we want to meet your requirement. Can you give us some money? It's the other way around. INEC is the only body empowered to formulate electoral guidelines. But, these are interesting times.
Very interesting times indeed. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana.